Now, Bill Cameron.
Adam Andrzejewski is here. He's the founder and CEO of OpenTheBooks.com, a really good watchdog on wasteful government spending. Adam, welcome to the show.
Great to be on the program, Bill. Thank you very much for your interest in our work.
First, tell folks what OpenTheBooks.com is.
So Open the Books is a continuation of my 2010 gubernatorial campaign writ large across the country. If you remember, Bill, back in 2010, it was a long time ago, like a decade ago, I ran on two themes. One was every dime online in real time, aggressive financial transparency all the way down into the subcontractor level where the real corruption exists. The second thing that I ran on was a concept called forensic auditing. Deep evidentiary follows the money and holds up in court. So that's what we do at OpenTheBooks.com. Last year, we filed 41,500 Freedom of Information Act requests. These were sunshine requests on nearly every single substantial unit of government in the country. We captured and posted online $6 trillion of federal, state, and local spending last year. This had never been done before in the history of the country.
Okay, now one of your headlines really grabbed me the other day. 2.3 trillion, T for trillion, in mistaken payments made by 20 largest federal agencies since 2004. Tell us about that one.
So I think this drives everybody across the entire political spectrum absolutely crazy. We know on the back end of the Office of Management and Budget, and this is an agency very powerful, that's a part of the office of the executive office of the president in the White House, where the annual report mandated by Congress exists. And we downloaded this report where the 20 largest federal agencies admit to their improper and mistaken payments. So first off, let's define it. An improper payment is a payment to the wrong person or entity for the wrong reason or under the wrong set of rules, or all of the above. So, I mean, these are mistakes. This is taxpayer money out the door that should not have gone out the door. And since 2004, we added up all of these reports. We compiled the number, and it's absolutely stunning. $2.3 trillion since 2004 is what the 20 largest agencies admit to.
Now, is there any chance of getting any of the $2.3 trillion back?
Well, there is. So about a year and a half ago, I'm a senior contributor at Forbes, and I had done a piece on the 2017 improper payments. And the feedback that we got from our subscribers was they wanted to know what was being done, since these were improper payments that could be identified, that were admitted to by these large federal programs. What was being done to get taxpayer money back? What was the clawback? What was the auditing mechanism? So we specifically honed in on that this year. And here's what we found. So in 2019, last year, the latest statistics available, $175 billion was improperly spent. And let's put that in perspective, Bill. That's $15 billion a month. That's $500 million a day. It's $1 million a minute while the bureaucrats are at work that was mistakenly spent. And we found that 14 cents on every dollar was actually clawed back. 86 cents on every dollar is gone forever.
And why is that? Why can't we get the 86 cents back too?
Exactly. Well, we reached out to the major agencies that admit to the improper payments, like the Internal Revenue Service. So here's what they said in a statement back to us. So first off, I want to put it in context. The third worst program on improper payments is administered by the IRS. It's called the Earned Income Tax Credit Program. And last year, nearly $18 billion went out the door, they admit to, on an improper basis. These tax credit payments went back to people who didn't deserve them. But the IRS, in a statement to us, says it's going to continue. They don't have the resources, they say. Congress hasn't provided them the resources to stop these improper payments. It's one out of every $4 paid out of this program the IRS admits to is overpaid. And they also say they can't stop it. It's going to continue.
And give us some highlights from other major federal agencies which admit to wasting money.
So the Social Security Administration. So last year they admit to about $8 billion of mistaken and improper payments. And we dug a little deeper and found their books are absolutely a mess. So they actually have active Social Security numbers for 6 million Americans. And check this out, aged 112 and older. Bill, there's only 40 of those people alive in the entire world.
I don't know whether to laugh or to cry. How is this possible?
Well, it's institutionalized incompetence at the bureaucracy. And so, look, where is government running well? And a report like this just shows that when you get right into the gory details, the agencies themselves admit that they are not running well. And one of my favorite examples to illustrate this, Bill, is payments to dead people. So these are payments that where a person has a federal death certificate on file. For instance, a bureaucrat dies and they continue to get paid, or a retiree dies and they continue to receive their pension annuity, or a farmer dies and they continue to get farm subsidies. These are payments that should not go out the door. Last year, about $1 billion went out the door to dead people, and over the course of the last 4 years, about $3 billion continued to flow to people who are dead.
And what's the story on the other entitlements, Medicare and Medicaid?
So everyone remembers back in 2012 when we got the Affordable Health Care Act, and Barack Obama signed that, saying we're going to pay for it by reining in the waste, fraud, corruption, and taxpayer abuse, the improper payments over at Medicare and Medicaid. So we fact-checked what happened. So in 2012, there was about $64 billion improperly and mistakenly paid out of those two programs. By 2017, that number had rose to over $88 billion, and we found last year the program had become even more inefficient. The amount of improper payments had risen to $103 billion last year out of Medicare and Medicaid.
Now those are bad enough. That's gigantic waste. There are some other categories I like to talk about: fraud and abuse and inefficiency. How big is the fraud problem that we know about?
So here's how I like to describe it. We've done a lot of reports at OpenTheBooks.com. About on a monthly basis, we actually publish a report on a tranche of federal spending. And one of the reports that inspired a brand new chapter in the President's Budget to Congress that came out in February of this year for fiscal year 2021, the White House called me and they said it was inspired by our Where's the Pork Oversight Report. And the new chapter in the President's budget was called Eliminating Wasteful Government Spending. And two of our reports were actually cited, and our website was hyperlinked in the President's Budget to Congress. So we've had a really big impact, on our mission, in this space. But, to answer your question, how much in the aggregate, and I think we have to answer it with the following example. It's 1982. We go back to the Reagan administration, the Grace Report, and it was privately funded, and they determined after they had access to everything and studied all levels of federal government spending that 1 out of every $3 was waste, fraud, corruption, abuse, or duplication. And Bill, nobody thinks it's any better today. That would be about $1.2 trillion, north of $1.2 trillion today, if we had a normal $4 trillion budget.
We're talking to Adam Andrzejewski, who is the founder and CEO of OpenTheBooks.com, a wonderful watchdog resource on wasteful government spending. How about the category of abuse? People actually knowing the rules but abusing them to waste money. How big is that?
We think it's huge. It's millions and billions of dollars, and I want to give you some specific examples. So we identified Cornell University. This is an Ivy League college. They've got a massive endowment. They need to make the case they need taxpayer money, which I think is a weak case at best. Cornell took $1 million grant to study where it hurts the most to be stung by a bee. NASA took $1 million grant to prepare the nation's religions for the discovery of extraterrestrial life. Over in Maxine Waters' congressional district, there was a grant for $1.4 million out of Health and Human Services to teach sex education to California prostitutes who could probably teach the class.
And my other favorite
Look, there's
category is
waste everywhere.
inefficiency. I mean, so much of government is set up to be inefficient. How much waste is in that?
Well, let's just take a look at the wish list that came out of the U.S. House. Nancy Pelosi wrote a bill called the HEROES Act back in May. This was a big coronavirus bailout bill for a number of levels of organizations and governments across the country. But everybody in Illinois remembers when new Senate president in our state legislature, Don Harmon out of Oak Park, wrote a letter to Pelosi asking for a $42 billion bailout of Illinois. And everybody laughed. Well, our auditors dug into what Nancy Pelosi put forward and actually passed in the House. It was never picked up in the Senate. It still hasn't been picked up in the Senate by Mitch McConnell. But tucked in there for Illinois at the state and the local level is $40 billion worth of bailout. And I want to go through some of the towns that would receive those monies. So Glencoe, Illinois, it is the 8th richest zip code in the entire country. Its average household income is $360,000 a year. Tucked into Nancy Pelosi's bailout of Illinois is $4.4 million for Glencoe. Winnetka, it's the 9th richest community in the entire country. It's got an average household income of about $350,000. They don't need our money. Tucked into Nancy Pelosi's bailout of Illinois is $6.1 million. I mean, this stuff's outrageous.
And we're about to do another round of stimulus, probably at least when Biden gets in, for cities and states. So how much waste could there be in that?
A ton. And let's just go to Nancy Pelosi's district in San Francisco. So into her bill on the local bailout bill, she tucked $1.3 billion in there for the city of San Francisco. Well, most people don't realize that San Francisco is not only a city, but over the same footprint, it's also a county. And there's another $500 million in there for the county. So Nancy Pelosi would provide $1.8 billion of our money into the city and county government of her hometown in San Francisco.
And we haven't talked about the military yet. I can just imagine this is a gigantic budget that keeps going up by dozens of billions of dollars with every budget. Talk about the military.
Well, we have wanted to dig into an oversight report on the Pentagon, on the Department of Defense for years. And hopefully in 2021, we're not subject matter experts on defense spending, but I think we've made relationships to where in 2021 we can come out with this report. Here's why we want to do it. The Pentagon keeps flunking their audit. So kudos to the Trump administration. They forced the Pentagon under a law that was at least 10 years old. The Pentagon had never submitted to their audit. The Trump administration forced them to do the audit. It was 1,200 auditors. They spend about $500 million a year on the audit, and they flunked, and they flunked it 2 or 3 times now. So we know there's a ton of bureaucratic waste there. In an open letter to the president that my organization published at the Wall Street Journal and USA Today, encouraging the president to wage war on waste, to engage in the transparency revolution, we highlighted the example at the Pentagon that they were purchasing expensive coffee cups for their fighter pilots. Each cup cost taxpayers $1,200. This was picked up by Senate Judiciary Chairman at the time, Chuck Grassley, the U.S. Senator out of Iowa. He wrote the oversight letter to the Pentagon, got the program stopped, and we found that the Pentagon spent $350,000 on these expensive coffee cups before the program was stopped.
So, Adam, what is your solution to all of this?
Look, this government was instituted to secure our rights, the rights of the people. Our rights come from God. They don't come from Washington, D.C. And what that does is it gives us charge to hold Washington, D.C. and Springfield accountable. When they take our tax dollars, they spend those dollars, and they need to prove that they're spending our money on, frugally, effectively, and without a hint of corruption. It's a high bar, and we'll get there if all of us raise our voice and insist on a new day.
I'm just wondering how, in practical terms, you do it. Part of me thinks that the federal government is so gigantic it's unmanageable. How would you literally, practically do it?
So let's talk about just what happened in the last election cycle right here in Illinois. Blue Illinois, across the board, they handily rejected by 10 points. It was a landslide to reject Pritzker's attempt to hike taxes in the state on that fair tax. So, look, that was a good first start. You know, government in Illinois, they can't tax us more. They have to start cutting, and the first place to cut is in our local units of government. We've identified 110,000 public employees in Illinois at every level, in the city of Chicago, Cook County, state government, in our local school districts. 110,000 public employees that have salaries north of $100,000 or pensions greater than $100,000. Just in our school districts, there's 35,000 administrators and educators with salaries and pensions over $100,000. You've got art teachers in suburban schools making up to $140,000 a year. Driver's ed teachers, like right here in Hinsdale, making up to $160,000, $170,000 a year. I mean, it's completely out of control. They need to do three things, Bill, here in Illinois. Government needs to cut, and reduce the burden and the heavy boot of government on the throats of the Illinois taxpayer.
Now, you've heard the governor and Mayor Lightfoot say they need stimulus from Washington because of the pandemic. How much do you think they need, if any?
So let's just go to one example. You know, look, what is the compelling case to force taxpayers in well-run states to bail out the fiscal mismanagement of Illinois? And I don't see a compelling case. How do you take working and middle-class taxpayers from around the country, take their tax dollars into corrupt Chicago? Look, Chicago bonds are 2 notches below investment grade. It's a junk bond town. And I want to give you one example that's been in the news lately with a vendor, Dominion Voting Systems. This is the vendor receiving the white-hot scrutiny because, by and large, in Georgia, Michigan, you know, Clark County, Nevada, Maricopa County, Arizona, they were the vendor that did the electronic voting. Well, in Chicago and Cook County, 10-year contracts with Dominion Voting for $52 million. And in order to do it, Chicago took the funding from other programs, and those programs had to wait because Chicago spent the money to do these expensive Dominion Voting system contracts. So it's decisions like that happen locally, that happen in Chicago, that aren't for the good of the people and the taxpayer, but you know, then they're making a case to get bailed out from around the country.
Now, of course, Adam, Mike Madigan is at the center of all the spending in Illinois. As a longtime Illinois Republican, what's your take of Speaker Madigan, of all people, in trouble for re-election?
Well, look, you know, when ComEd pleads to hundreds of millions of dollars in fines to make their case go away, and the Speaker is official A, I think he has real problems with the federal government. Look, Governor Pritzker, you know, he recognizes the fiscal crisis that Illinois is in, and rather than making the tough decisions to properly size and scale Illinois government, he's actually doing a runaround. He's not even waiting for Congress, Bill. Pritzker has actually gone to a new municipal lending facility at the Federal Reserve. There's no accountability there. Pritzker is the first state to go to the Federal Reserve and borrow over $3 billion. And now taxpayers around the country are beholden to Illinois, and there was no vote in Congress. Pritzker did a runaround, first state to go to this federal lending facility. It's an embarrassment that we needed $3 billion from the Fed. This has never been done before, and Pritzker's, you know, he's starting to milk taxpayers from around the country now for Illinois' fiscal mismanagement, like dairy cows.
But isn't Mike Madigan the last guy in the world you Republicans would have thought would be in trouble for re-election as Speaker?
Our organization had done oversight on Lisa Madigan at the Attorney General's office. We had done oversight on Shirley Madigan running the Illinois Arts Council. Everybody, there's been plenty of scrutiny on Michael Madigan over the years, but nobody was able to prove it. Proving things in a court of law is a whole nother level. And so, the proper officials have been engaged, the U.S. Attorney, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and I'm confident that they'll get to the bottom of it. Look, our organization had investigated the right-hand man of Michael Madigan. He's currently the Illinois Auditor General, Frank Montino. And so when he was appointed to that position, right before he was confirmed by the Illinois legislature, we found gross malfeasance in his former state rep campaign fund. And we think, as a weak character, Montino may have led the feds and given them the breadcrumbs to be able to start the investigation 3 years ago that has ultimately led us to this point.
Really? What evidence of that is there?
So there was lots of misspending in Montino's campaign fund. Hundreds of thousands of dollars spent at the same gas station in his hometown, things like this. There was campaign expenses disclosed in his campaign fund at his local bank for phone banking, precinct walkers. Banks don't do that. So we do know that a grand jury was convened that was in the press. Subpoenas were issued. What we don't know is then everything went quiet, and we didn't hear anything for years. However, we have it on good information that was helpful.
Interesting. Well, we should talk about pensions in Illinois because it's such a gigantic drag on the Treasury. What should be done about the pension obligation in Illinois?
Well, so, we forecast by 2023 there'll be 20,000 retired Illinois educators on a six-figure, $100,000 a year pension. So, people need to work longer, pay in more, and the cost of living adjustment, that 3% guarantee, needs to be eliminated. That makes the system solvent over a couple of decades.
Do we also need to go to the voters for a referendum to repeal the pension article?
Why? While the Democrats have supermajorities in our state legislature and the governor, I think that is not, for a long period of time, that's not even in the cards.
Well, this is all depressing, Adam. Any optimism to talk about?
Yeah, I think that after this election cycle, people across the political spectrum are engaged. In 2016, Bernie Sanders on the left and Donald Trump on the right ran on eerily similar themes, that the system is rigged and it's rigged for insiders. At OpenTheBooks.com, we show you just how bad it is. And as this interview shows, everybody listening can tell, we're specific. We name names, we name programs, we name amounts, and we show you the work that needs to be done.
That's Adam Andrzejewski. He's the founder and CEO of OpenTheBooks.com. Adam, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks for your interest in our work.